We've spoken quite a bit about the whole theme of what we're talking about today is about personal development and growth. And I find myself wondering, we seem to be so driven by this idea of growing, improving. And I wonder how much of that is sort of implicit to our nature, our being. And I wonder how much of that is because of maybe, are we sort of internalizing capitalism, the idea that we've got to be growing. You mentioned it earlier on, in fact, and I'm also thinking about sort of you know general well-being and happiness, and if you look towards Buddhism and meditation, sort of the idea of being content with what you have and present in the moment. How that seems to sort of be almost in direct contrast with this idea that we need to grow and develop and acquire more. Is there a balance to be found between the two? And I guess my original question was, how much of this is implicit to us as a humans, and how much of it is because society says we need to grow?
I really like this question, and I think there are some really useful distinctions to be made. So the first question is there something implicit, inherent to being a human that's about growth and development? And in my view, the obvious answer would be yes, because if you look at the human animal across the lifespan, and I think this is well understood in psychology at this point, we of course grow. We grow physically, we develop new physical capacities, we grow mentally, we develop new mental capacities. We also grow as a species. We, as a species, develop new capabilities and the ability to do new things over vast stretches of time. I think if you look at the work of people like Maslow, who was one of the first people, but I think not the first, to talk about the concept of self-actualization, the idea that one of our inherent psychological tendencies is to actualize ourselves in the world in different ways. Or the work of Carl Jung, who talked about individuation. So part of our life's task is to become an individual. I think it's clear that there is something about growth and the development of new capacities that is inherent to being human. However, one problem is when we don't grow in a manner which is concordant to our true selves, but we absorb just the values of the people around us or the systems we happen to form part of. So, for example, one person, like building businesses, making money, being an entrepreneur, that might really speak to their true self. They're like a leader, they love producing wealth, they love forming organizations. It's true to themselves to pursue that path. Another person, they might be more soaking up by osmosis what they think they should do by view of existing in a capitalist context. Like in a capitalist context, I'm not an anti-capitalist, but in a capitalist context, someone might say, okay, making money clearly is the way to be successful, and obviously lots of people fall into this trap, and then they spend half their lives trying to make a lot of money, and then they do, and then they're still terribly unhappy because, unlike the first person, making money isn't really concordant with their value system. Actually, what they really want to do is fill in the blank. So I think growth is a huge part of our nature, but it's really important, as I said at the beginning of the conversation, to develop a conscious awareness of what you care about, what fulfills you, what fascinates you, so that you're not growing some sort of image or persona of yourself you can use to get through life that other people will approve of. But you're actually developing, you're actualizing your own set of values, something that's concordant with your true self. Like you love to help people, you become a doctor, say. I think it's really interesting then bringing in concepts of Buddhism. So as you said, Buddhism is more about acceptance of self, acceptance of the way the world is, and doesn't that contradict notions of growth? I don't think it's an either or. So if you look at Gestalt psychotherapy, one of the really interesting things there is the paradoxical theory of change. In this theory, it's outlined that in order to change and grow in a way that's healthy and useful, you first have to accept yourself. So imagine if you have a weight problem and you'd like to lose weight, if you can't accept that you're overweight, if you can't bear to look at yourself in the mirror, if you can't bear to step on the scales, if you can't bear to examine what you've been eating or how you've been living your life, it's actually going to be really difficult to change. If you feel you have rock bottom self-esteem because you're at a particular weight, it's going to be really difficult to change. The more you accept where you are and accept that wherever you happen to be, in whatever area of your life, you have value and you deserve good things in your life, that removes a lot of the mental blocks to the behavioral change which we find so difficult. So if you're 30 kilograms overweight, but you can look yourself in the mirror and say, even though I'm 30 kilograms overweight and I'd like to change that, I can still on some basic level accept myself. I don't have to burden myself with self-criticism. Then a person can begin to do the things they might do quite naturally to change. Okay, now I'm going to hire a personal trainer, or I'm going to go for a run on the weekend, or I'm going to take a look at my food and I guess have to start to swap out some of the unhealthy foods with healthy foods. Often when we're stuck in life, it's not because we don't know what to do. It's because we have those blocks. And I think one huge block is a lack of self-acceptance. So that's I think it's not an either or. If you accept yourself and you overcome these blocks and actually what you want to do is meditate in a cave for 10 years, then so be it. And some people have done that, and they've actually led really interesting lives and wrote really interesting books about that. And some people, we're not all the same. Some people have that contemplative nature. Some people want to do things in the world and they want to build things. Some people are more introspective. Some people are warriors. We have these different predispositions, and you will grow in that direction. The person who's sitting in the cave meditating is still growing. It's just in a kind of more subtle, more quiet way than the entrepreneur. But I guess what I'm getting at is the more you can develop a reasonable level of self-acceptance, then there's this kind of what humanistic psychologists call a self-actualizing tendency takes over. You kind of start to grow kind of automatically, the way if you put seeds in fertile soil and water it, it just grows. You don't have to tell the plant what to do. You've created the right conditions. So this, for example, is a big feature of person-centered therapy, where Carl Rogers, who founded person-centered therapy, talked about you create the right conditions for a person to grow and develop in therapy, and they grow and develop. And there isn't, sometimes we do too much in therapy. We try to make people change or make people grow, and that can be a mistake. So it's the same principle. Acceptance and growth don't contradict each other, but they can complement each other.